Hello, it's been a very long time since I've made any updates for this project, but the project is still alive. I think my last video was 8 months ago, which shows you just how little I actually enjoy making this kind of content. I'm much more interested in actually making the film than making videos about making films, to be honest. But I decided I would do another update, and it's for my own sake as much as anything else. But anyway, I'll show you what work has been done on this in the meantime. Not much has changed up here in this cockpit, and if you go down here, the only big difference you'll see here is that the aluminium crates that were on this side have been replaced with these soft bags. And at the last video, that was all that I had done. So now if you go through here, we have an airlock. Some of these assets are reused, like this instrument panel here, although the screen is new. And then everything else is done from scratch here. Most of it's pretty simple. Oh, this thing is also reused from the cockpit. I used Fusion, I think, for most of these, although these panels here are subdivision until you get to the panels that have the cutout for the hatch. This was done with surfacing in Fusion 360. Let's take a look outside. So if we go through this hatch, and I'll just turn around, we have an exterior. So I'll start down here. This section is quite basic, just a cone and a cylinder and a very quick treatment in Substance Painter. There's nothing special going on here. Again, very simple down here. These materials down here are done with triplanar texturing. I don't think I'll bother to UV these. Let's move up. The exterior of the airlock itself is the only really detailed part of this, because this is where all the close-up shots of the exterior are, except for one at the very top. But most of the exterior that you see will be this area here. So I decided to cover it with this soft fabric material. You often see this on space stations. I actually don't know what it is. Maybe it's thermal insulation or shielding against micrometeoroids. I don't know, but it looks cool. So I decided to put it on. This is one of the shots where you see the exterior. And this lighting is pretty close to the final lighting actually, because the only light out here is the sun. And on the other side of the spacecraft, you can't see it in this shot, but on the other side there's a very faint light, which is the reflected light off the planet. I don't know if I'll have that though, because I actually think it looks quite nice when it just fades to total darkness, like you see on this side here. But yeah, you can see why I just concentrated the detail on this section here. The exterior of this section is pretty simple as well. This had a very quick treatment in Substance Painter, but I stressed that it was very quick. And some of these details are just done with triplanar texturing. So there will be one relatively close shot, which is of the radio antenna. But yeah, that's the exterior of the spacecraft. Moving on to the shuttle. So I did an exterior for this. You don't really see much of it, so I didn't spend too much time on it. The engine nozzles are exactly the same as the one on the other spaceship. For the fuselage itself and the wings, I did do a quick treatment in Substance Painter. Again, it's very low detail. On this side you can see that kind of distressed sheet metal height map that I put in. You often see that on older aircraft. I wanted to give the idea that this thing has been used quite a lot and has gone through a lot of heating and cooling down cycles and pressure and depressure cycles. If I remember correctly, this material on the bottom here is just a sort of, it's just an off-the-shelf rubber material. I think I might have got it on Megascans. I tried making my own and it looked awful, and because you almost never really see that side of it, I decided I wouldn't really spend much effort on it. If we go into the interior, I didn't spend much time on this. I actually had made this and then decided to redo it again because it looked awful. The colour is the same colour that you find on Russian military aircraft. You can see that in general it's a lot sparser than the other ship. That's because I just didn't want to spend too much time on it, for one thing. A lot of the shots that are in this area are very claustrophobic And the characters are wearing these bulky spacesuits, which gets in the way of the camera, which means that a lot less of the interior of this spaceship is actually visible to the camera. And for some of this, it's going to be dark as well. So I didn't really want to waste time on it. And those seats are repurposed from a project I did about 7 years ago, which was an F-86 actually, an F-86 first generation jet fighter. This panel is repurposed from the cockpit of the other spaceship. This one is made from scratch, but it's very quick and dirty. All of these, which you can barely see out of the corner of the camera, these are just retextured assets from the first spaceship. So all I had to really do here was focus on the walls, and there's a lot less going on these panels than there is in the other ship. These characters are metahumans, and these two in particular are assets that I made 2 years ago for a university project. The faces are sculpted from scratch, and then the high frequency details are taken from displacement textures, and the clothes are made from scratch myself in Marvelous Designer. Things like the hair, that's just standard off the shelf metahuman creator hair. I've barely dabbled with hair, so I'm not going to touch that. That's beyond my capability. There are two other characters which I made more recently, including this guy. And at this point I haven't really done any real figurative or character sculpting in a long time, so I'm out of practice. So I did a fairly quick and dirty sculpt of the head in ZBrush, and I brought that into Unreal Engine to use Mesh to Metahuman, and then I let Metahuman Creator correct a lot of the mistakes, especially around the eye and the mouth. And so I still got the overall face shape that I wanted with all the corrections from the Metahuman Creator, which is a nice compromise, I think, given my current ability at face sculpting. Here are a couple of shots of the spacesuit, and this is also an asset that I'd done a couple of years ago, and I was going to redo it from scratch, and I decided that that would just take too much time, and I'm out of practice with Marvelous Designer as well. So in the end I reworked the helmet, and I did a little bit of texturing work, but there's still some things that I need to fix. At the moment this doesn't use a normal map, and you can see some faceting on some of the wrinkles, like right here on the bottom left. So I have to look into baking a normal map for this and creating some variations of the textures, because at various points in the film all the characters will put on these spacesuits. You don't always see their faces, so I want to make it clear who's who without having to see their faces. At the moment you don't have any faces in the helmet, it's just the spacesuit asset. And here's the asset on its own. Right now you can see through it, but I'll make it double-sided. Designing this helmet was actually quite challenging because in the plot they opened their helmets, so I had to make it actually work, and I had to make sure there's enough space so that they can put on oxygen masks, because that's another thing that happens in the film. And I did all this design work in Fusion 360, which kind of isn't ideal. Fusion is not good for designing things on the fly, but that's how I ended up doing it. It took a while and it was hard, but I'm pretty happy with the design now. It's actually loosely inspired by the Russian Orlan spacesuit. And here are just a couple more shots, one outside the airlock and then just inside that airlock. I'll wrap up this video with that. That shows the bulk of the work that I've done over the last 8 months. Hopefully it will be sooner than 8 months before I make another one, but no promises there.